This is the Peach Fuzz. It's present, it's versatile, and it's about to become your favorite fuzz. Hi, I'm Andy from Riff Pedal Co, and today I'd like to introduce you to our first release, the Peach Fuzz. We designed the Peach Fuzz to be a fairly responsive classic fuzz tone. It retains all of its mids to help it cut through a band mix. We gave it a few extra features to make it as versatile and useful as possible while keeping the controls as simple as we could. So we chose the Peach Fuzz as our first release because fuzz is really where instrument effects all started. If you go back to the 60s, those first few fuzz circuits are the first, effects in a box. And they changed really how we look at guitar and how it's shaped with electronics. I wanted to make a fuzz that performed well across bass as well as guitar. I wanted it to sound big and present, and I didn't want that scooped mids. The tone of the Peach Fuzz has been shaped to try and limit that woolliness that you get with some fuzz effects and keep that presence so it can push through a dense mix. I wanted that vintage fuzz reaction to your pick and your fingers, so if you dig in, it'll fuzz more. If you're gentle, it'll clean up. You can clean it up with your volume pot. But I also wanted it to be able to use it deeper in the signal chain, so it doesn't have to be the first thing on your board. We'll have a look at how we did that in a minute. For now, let's let the Peach Fuzz say hello and give it a quick listen. Okay. So for reference, here's my clean tone. We have my Les Paul with the 60s style burst buckers running straight through my interface to my DAW. So we get a flat, clean signal. I'm using a cab sim, but no other amp or effect plugins. So all the dirt you're hearing is coming from the pedal. Okay, so it's pretty inoffensive, completely clean, no amp distortion in the mix today. Now let's hear the Peach Fuzz. All the controls are at noon as our starting point. Okay, so it's pretty dirty. Let's have a look at the controls and see how they can help us shape our sound. We have a volume pot to control the level coming out of the pedal. The pedal's designed to give you more than unity output no matter how you have the other controls set, so there's plenty of signal available. We have the fuzz pot to control how dirty your sound is, from clean to completely exploded. And we have the bias pot to control the tone and type of fuzz that you get from the pedal. Then we have the more switch that lets you choose between a tempered input that will handle buffered signal or active pickups, or more mode that will give it everything. That bias control is really how we choose what sort of fuzz tone we're going to get from the Peach Fuzz, so let's dig into that a bit. The Peach Fuzz is a classic 2-transistor gain stage, so each transistor is smashing signal into the power rails, squaring off that wave, and handing it off to the next. That's what produces that super distorted sound. In the Peach Fuzz, the bias pot controls how much voltage is fed to that second transistor. So if we dial that all the way off, we're limiting it to about 1.4 volts. It means that it can barely move our wave before it runs out of juice, squares off, and distorts. It's like low res mode for your guitar. It also means without any extra push of guitar signal coming in, it doesn't have enough juice to pass any signal at all. That's where we get that gated, spitty tone. Let's have a look. Okay, so that's a bit of fun. You can hear that we've cut a lot of the high out of the signal down that end of the bias. If we roll it all the way up, we're actually going to feed up to about 8 volts into our bias point. You're going to have a lot more power to move. It's going to have a lot more detail coming through from the guitar. It's also restored all those highs, so we get a lot more air and bite coming through. So that's got that chewy sort of asymmetrical clip. We're giving it more headroom. It's a lot more responsive to how we push the guitar or don't. If we roll off the volume pot or even just play lightly with our picking hand, we get that sort of push clean sound. So let's see if we can get some of that going. So those clean tones are available. It's really responsive. So if you dig in with a pick where you've got the bias back around that sort of 3 o'clock mark, we're giving it that perfect voltage, 4.5 volts or so coming through. It's going to really respond to our input a lot more. So if we're gentle, it cleans up. If we dig, it fuzzes out. So while we've got the bias there, if we crank that fuzz, we're going to get a really heavy distortion sound. That's where, you know, if you're doom band or stoner rock, stoner metal band, this is where you're going to have some fun. So the last control we have here is our more switch. That controls how much signal is coming into the Peach Fuzz. So if you're playing a guitar with passive pickups and it's the first pedal on your board, you'll leave it on more all the time. But if you're using something with active pickups or you're coming out of a buffered pedal into the Peach Fuzz, it just lets you control that input to stop it from getting super overblown, super compressed, super squared off. So I've got a bass up here with EMG actives in it. Let's get that down and have a play and see how that changes our sound. So that gives a good amount of control. You go from a completely compressed square wave back to a pushed overdriven sound. It's got a lot more room and a lot more detail in it. Depending on where you set that bias, we can maybe dial in a bit of a rock tone that would be a bit of an always on effect that just pushes your bass to make it sound aggressive without fuzzing it out completely. Let's see if we can dial that in. We can also use the more switch to manage buffered input from another pedal. So let's see how it reacts to a Crybaby. If we have the switch in the more position, the Peach Fuzz is just overwhelmed by the signal flowing out of the wah. Flipping it to less will let the wah talk clearly through the fuzz. So this also lets us set up some more fun combinations without ruining our fuzz tone. I like to have a pitch shifter coming in to a fuzz. It lets the pitch shifter track more accurately and then really scream out those high octaves that it adds on top. Let's have a bit of a play with that. Here we have the Electro Harmonics pitchfork feeding into the Peach Fuzz. So that's the Peach Fuzz from Riff Pedal Company. If you made it this far into the video, thank you very much. Please drop a like and a subscribe. Keep an eye out for our next releases. The Peach Fuzz will be going up on riffpedalco.com on Friday the 6th of March. So please come check out the specs, buy one, pop it on your board, thank me in the comments. If you do have any questions, please drop a comment below. Otherwise, I would love to hear what the weirdest fuzz combo is, which pedals you've paired up with a fuzz, and was the fuzz first or the other pedal first. Other than that, thank you very much. I'll see you on the next one.